This happened over about 3 weeks last October in a suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. I'm not going to give the exact street name for reasons that'll make sense later. I'll call it Sycamore Court, because that's close enough. It started with an order that should not have gone through. The app doesn't let you deliver to addresses that don't exist. That's the whole point of the GPS pin it locks to a real structure. But at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, I got an order for 114 Sycamore Court, and when I pulled up, there was no house. Just a black rectangle of a lot behind a chain link fence, weeds up past my knees, and a busted mailbox leaning sideways like something had hit it. No porch light, no numbers on anything. The app still said, "Arrived complete handoff," and gave me a 5-star default rating before I'd done a single thing. I remember sitting in my car outside that fence for a solid minute, engine running, bag of orange chicken going cold on the passenger seat, just thinking, weird glitch. Then I drove off and didn't think about it again until it happened 4 more times. So some background on me. My name doesn't matter. I'll just say I'm 27. I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my dog, Biscuit, a mutt I got from the shelter 2 years before this whole thing started. I worked a warehouse job during the day, forklift certified, decent enough pay, but I'd gotten behind on a car repair bill and some credit card stuff, so I picked up delivery driving 3 or 4 nights a week to dig myself out. Nothing, just a guy trying to stay above water like half the country. I usually worked the 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift because the tips were better bar orders, late night munchies, people too drunk or too lazy to cook. I had a route I liked, mostly the same 6 or 7 neighborhoods on rotation, and I knew them well enough that I didn't need the GPS half the time. I also want to mention my coworker, Dee. Not coworker exactly, since we're both independent contractors and don't technically work with each other, but we hung out at the same gas station between orders, the one with the good coffee machine on Route 40, and we'd talk shop while we waited for pings. Dee had been doing this longer than me, almost 2 years. Single mom, sharp as hell, didn't take crap from anybody. She's actually the reason I know as much as I do about what happened, because she delivered to that same address before I ever did. The first time I brought it up to her, the empty lot, the phantom order, she got quiet for a second, which wasn't like her. "Yeah," she said. "I got that address back in August. Same thing, no house. I figured it was a scam order, some kid pranking the app for free food." "Did you report it?" I tried. Support just said the delivery was marked complete and I'd get paid, so... She shrugged. Wasn't going to argue with getting paid for nothing. I laughed it off. We both did. It felt like exactly what it looked like, a glitch, a prank, a weird gap in the system that some bored teenager had found a way to exploit. There's a whole subreddit about people gaming food delivery apps. I'd read some of those threads myself. For about a week, life went back to normal. I did my shifts. I dropped off pizzas and pho and a truly upsetting number of protein shakes to the same Jim Bro apartment complex. Biscuit and I did our morning walk before I crashed for the day. Nothing about any of it felt like the beginning of something. Except the orders from Sycamore Court kept coming. Not to Dee anymore. To me. Always between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. Always small, a single item. Usually something cheap like a side of fries or a plain bagel. Nothing that made sense as an actual meal. Always paid through some prepaid gift card that the app flagged as unverified but let through anyway. And always, every single time, an exact $13.13 tip. Not $13. Not $13.13 to the penny, every order. I noticed the number the third time. That's when it stopped feeling like a glitch and started feeling like a choice somebody was making on purpose. I want to walk through these carefully because at the time, none of them seemed like much. That's kind of the point. Looking back, I can line them up like dominoes. Living through them, each one had a totally reasonable explanation, and I took the reasonable explanation every time, because that's what normal people do. The lot itself. On my second delivery there, I actually got out of the car, told myself I was curious about the glitch, wanted to see if maybe there was a house set back from the road that Google Maps just hadn't caught up with yet. There wasn't. Just the lot, the fence, the weeds, and this time a folding lawn chair sitting dead center in the property, facing the street. Old aluminum frame kind, the webbing sun-bleached and torn. I remember thinking somebody uses this lot to hang out or something. Kids, probably. Made sense. The porch light that wasn't there. Third delivery, I swear I saw a light flicker somewhere back in the weeds, low to the ground, like a phone screen or a lighter. I chalked it up to a reflection off my own headlights or somebody's security camera catching a glint. I didn't get out of the car that time. Biscuit. This is the one that actually got under my skin a little, though I didn't connect it to anything at the time. A few days into all this, I started noticing Biscuit wouldn't settle down on our evening walk if we went anywhere near Route 40, the road that eventually connects to Sycamore Court. He'd start pulling on the leash the other direction, ears back, this low whine he doesn't normally do. I figured maybe there was a stray cat or another dog in that direction that spooked him once. Dogs get weird about things. It's not that deep, I told myself. The radio. My car radio started doing this thing where, right around the time I'd get a Sycamore Court order, it would cut to static for a second or two, even on a strong signal station. Old car, I told myself. Bad antenna connector. I'd been meaning to get that looked at anyway. Dee's coworker. Dee mentioned, kind of offhand, that another driver she knew, guy named Frank, worked mostly daytime, had gotten an order to the same address, except his was during daylight hours, around 2 p.m. He told her the lot looked totally different in the daytime. Mowed, clean fence, no lawn chair, like it was two different properties depending on when you showed up. Dee laughed when she told me this, said Frank was probably just remembering it wrong, or mixing up addresses. I laughed too. But I remember writing the address down in my phone that night, just so I wouldn't lose track of the details. I told myself it was because the pattern was funny, a good story to tell people later. The handoff photos. The app requires a photo of the food at the drop-off point for orders marked "Leave at door," which was how every Sycamore Court order was set. I always took the photo of the bag sitting on the ground in front of the fence, since there was no door. On my fourth delivery there, I looked back at my photo history out of boredom while waiting for my next ping, and noticed something in the background of the second ever photo that I hadn't clocked in the moment, a pale shape, low to the ground, in the weeds maybe 15 feet back from the fence. Could have been a plastic bag caught on a branch. Could have been a rock. I zoomed in and it just got blurrier, the way phone photos do. I decided it was a bag. I didn't delete the photo, though. I don't know why I kept it. Something in me wanted proof of something, even before I knew what. The conversation that didn't happen. This is small, but it stuck with me. I mentioned the address to a guy at the gas station, another driver, just making conversation, And he got this look on his face, not scared exactly, more like uncomfortable, and said, "Man, I don't do that street anymore." And then physically turned and walked back to his car like the conversation was over. I asked Dee about it later, and she said she didn't know him well, just another regular. Didn't know why he'd say that. Every one of these things on its own means nothing. I want to be honest about that. A lawn chair in a field. A dog who doesn't like a smell. Static on an old radio. A blurry photo. People are weird. Life is weird. And I am generally not a guy who jumps to conclusions. I'm the guy who assumes it's the wiring before he assumes it's a ghost. But by the 5th delivery to that address, I'd stopped being able to talk myself out of the feeling that something was actually watching me show up. The 5th delivery is where things stop being explainable with a straight face. It was a Thursday, close to 1 a.m., and the order was for a single bagel, toasted, no cream cheese, again with the $13.13 tip. I pulled up like always, engine running, and this time the lawn chair wasn't facing the street. It was facing my car directly, like somebody had moved it since my last delivery 3 nights earlier, and angled it to watch the exact spot where I always parked. I sat there longer than I should have, long enough that my phone buzzed with the app nudging me. "Customer is waiting, please complete handoff." I got out, walked the bag to the fence line like always, snapped my photo, and that's when I heard it. A voice. Not loud. Almost conversational, like someone talking normally a few feet away, except there was nobody there. 2 words, maybe 3, and I genuinely could not tell you what they were. It wasn't English that I recognized, or it was English mangled by distance, or it was my own brain doing something with the wind through dead corn stalks in the field behind the lot. I want to be clear, I'm not going to pretend I know what I heard. I know that I heard something, and it came from low to the ground from the direction of the weeds, and it made every hair on my arm stand up before my brain even finished processing it. I did not investigate. I got in my car and drove to the gas station and sat in the parking lot with the doors locked for 20 minutes before I could make myself drive home. I told Dee everything the next night. She didn't laugh this time. "I heard something too," she said. "Back in August, I told myself it was a cat." "Was it a cat?" She looked at me for a second. "I don't think anything sounds like that." We started comparing notes properly after that, like actual investigators, which felt stupid and also necessary. Dee pulled up the county property records on her phone right there at the gas station. 114 Sycamore Court had burned down in a house fire almost 6 years earlier. 1 fatality, an elderly woman, name redacted in the public record, ruled accidental faulty wiring. Property had been in some kind of a state limbo ever since, taxes technically being paid by a shell LLC that Dee, to her credit, actually tried to look up and hit a dead end on. No demolition permit filed, no new construction, just a fenced lot that the county listed as vacant residential. "So who's ordering food to a burned-down house?" I said, mostly to myself. "Somebody's living there," Dee said. "That's the only thing that makes sense. Somebody's camping out on that lot and using our app because they don't have an actual address to give anybody." It made sense. It was almost a relief. Honestly, a homeless person, maybe someone struggling, someone who needed food and had found a workaround to get it, sitting on an empty lot because they had nowhere else to go. I felt kind of bad for having been scared. I decided that on my next delivery I was going to actually try to see the person, maybe say something kind, Maybe figure out if they needed real help. That's not what happened. 2 nights later, I got the order again, same time window, same $13.13, this time for a small drink. Nothing else, just a fountain soda, no food. I pulled up and the lawn chair was gone. In its place, closer to the fence than anything had ever been, was a stack of items laid out in a neat row on a flattened piece of cardboard. My bag photos, printed out. Every single handoff photo I had taken at that address, over 5 deliveries, printed on regular paper and laid out in order like a little gallery, weighted down against the wind with what looked like handfuls of gravel. I did not get out of the car. I did the handoff through the open window, tossing the drink toward the fence from maybe 15 feet away, snapped a photo through the windshield and left rubber on the road pulling out. That was the delivery that made me stop thinking homeless person needs help and start thinking something closer to the truth, even if I still didn't have words for what the truth was. Somebody wasn't just living on that lot. Somebody was documenting me. Somebody had gone out of their way to print photographs, meaning somebody had a printer, which meant somebody had a home base that wasn't a burned-down field, which meant the lot wasn't where they lived. It was where they worked. I stopped taking orders to that address after that. I told the app the delivery zone had unsafe road conditions, which felt like a lie and also felt completely true. For 4 days, nothing came through. I actually let myself believe it was over. On the 5th day, Dee didn't show up at the gas station. She didn't answer texts, didn't answer calls. Her last app activity showed a completed delivery at 12:58 a.m. to 114 Sycamore Court, and then nothing. No login the next morning. No login the next night. I drove to her apartment on the 2nd day of silence, and her car wasn't there. And her neighbor, an older guy who watered her plants sometimes, said he hadn't seen her either. Figured she was visiting family. I want to be honest that this is the part where I should have gone straight to the police. And I did try. I called and made a report, and they took it politely and told me that a 30-year-old woman who hadn't been seen for 2 days, with no signs of forced entry or violence, wasn't something they could put real resources into yet. She's an adult, the officer said. People go quiet for a few days sometimes. I understood why they said it. It didn't make it feel less like being told to go handle it myself. So that's what I did. I went back to Sycamore Court in daylight, which is something I should have tried from the start, because Frank, the other driver, had been right. It looked completely different. Mowed grass. A newer-looking chain link section on one side of the fence, like it had been repaired recently and not by the county. No lawn chair, no cardboard, no printed photos. Just an empty, tidy lot that looked exactly like what the property records said it was. Except the ground wasn't flat everywhere. About 20 feet back from the road, there was a rectangular depression in the grass, maybe 8 feet by 10, slightly sunken. The grass over it a shade lighter green than the rest, like it had been reseeded more recently. I've done enough warehouse and construction-adjacent work to recognize what a filled-in foundation or a covered structure looks like from the surface. This looked like something had been built into the ground and then buried shallow enough that the grass grew back, but the dirt hadn't fully settled. I found the hatch by accident, honestly, tripping over a metal ring flush with the ground that had been mostly hidden under a mat of dead grass clippings. It took me a solid 10 minutes of digging around the edge with my hands and a tire iron from my trunk before I got enough leverage to pull it open. I'm not going to pretend that was smart. I knew it wasn't smart while I was doing it. I did it anyway because Dee was missing and nobody else was going to check. Underneath was a narrow set of concrete steps going down maybe 8 feet into what I think used to be part of the original house's basement or storm shelter, something that survived the fire, even though the house above it hadn't. There was a battery lantern at the bottom, off, and I turned my phone flashlight on instead of touching anything I didn't have to. I'm going to describe what I saw as plainly as I can, because I don't want this to sound more dramatic than it was, and also because some of it doesn't need embellishing. The space was maybe 15 feet by 15 feet, low ceiling, concrete on all sides. One wall had a folding table with a laptop, closed, and a small battery-powered printer next to it, the same kind of thin, cheap inkjet you'd get for $80 at a big box store. Next to the printer, a stack of paper, and on top of the stack, more printed handoff photos. Mine. Dee's. At least 4 other drivers I didn't recognize, going back further than I'd realized dates on some of the printouts going back almost 2 years, longer than Dee had even been doing this job. On the opposite wall, taped up in neat, almost obsessive rows, were printed satellite images of the neighborhood, streets circled in red marker, certain houses starred. My apartment complex was one of them. Not my specific unit, as far as I could tell, but the building, circled twice. There was a notebook. I did open that one, because I couldn't stop myself. Handwriting, cramped, filling maybe 60 pages, and I only read a few before my hands were shaking too badly to keep going. I'm not going to repeat much of what was in it, because honestly, some things you read you can't unread, and I don't think reprinting it here does anything except spread it further. What I'll say is that it wasn't the diary of somebody homeless or somebody in crisis in the way I'd hoped. It read like notes, observations, timing patterns for when different drivers showed up, which ones came alone, which ones seemed like they'd be missed quickly and which ones wouldn't. There was a section with Dee's name at the top, her regular schedule mapped out almost to the minute, and a date 2 days before she went dark, circled 3 times. I did not find Dee down there. I want to say that clearly, because if you're waiting for that, it doesn't happen, and that's almost worse. What I found was proof that somebody had been studying delivery drivers, specifically ones who worked alone at night, specifically ones on quiet routes, for a lot longer than the 3 weeks I'd been dealing with it. I heard a sound from the steps above me. Not the voice from before. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Someone who knew exactly how many steps there were and wasn't in a hurry.
I'm not going to pretend I had a plan. What I had was a tire iron in one hand and a phone with 4% battery in the other, and about 2 seconds to decide something before whoever was coming down those steps got a look at me first. I turned my flashlight off. The lantern at my feet was still off too, so the room went fully dark except for the gray daylight bleeding down through the open hatch above the stairs. I moved to the side of the entrance, against the concrete wall, out of the direct line of the steps, and I stood as still as I've ever stood in my life. The footsteps stopped about halfway down. I remember thinking, they know I'm here, this is it, and being surprised at how calm the thought felt, like my body had decided panicking wasn't going to help, and just switched it off. Then I heard breathing steady, unhurried, and a voice, low, almost bored, saying something like, "You're not supposed to be down here." I didn't answer. I didn't move. Whoever it was took 2 more steps down, close enough that I could see a shape against the light from the hatch, not huge, not some movie monster, just a person, medium build, wearing something dark, standing at the base of the stairs with their back partially to me, looking at the table where the photos were, like they were checking whether anything had been touched. I only had one shot at this, and I knew it. When they turned toward the notebook, angling their back to me fully for a second, I swung the tire iron. Not at their head, I want to be honest. I aimed for the shoulder, because some part of me still didn't want to kill anybody. Even then, and I caught them across the upper arm and shoulder blade hard enough that they went down sideways into the table, knocking the laptop and the lantern to the floor. I didn't stay to see what happened next. I went up those stairs faster than I've moved in years, out through the hatch, across the lot, and I didn't stop running until I was back at my car with the doors locked and the engine turning over. I called 911 from the road, already driving, hands shaking so bad I dropped the phone twice. Police did respond. That part I'll give them credit for. Once I said hidden underground room and possible connection to a missing person, it stopped being a low-priority call fast. But by the time they got a unit to Sycamore Court, maybe 40 minutes after I'd left, the hatch was closed again. Grass clippings scattered back over it like it had never been touched. No laptop, no printer, no notebook, no person. They found the depression in the ground eventually after I insisted enough times and after a second unit came out with better equipment. They found the concrete steps. What they did not find was anything on the walls, the table, or the floor. No photos, no maps, nothing but bare concrete in a room that looked, in the officer's own words, like it hadn't been used in years. I stood there in that empty room and could not explain, even to myself, how somebody had cleared it that completely in under an hour, unless they'd had help, or unless they'd been ready for exactly this to happen someday. Dee came home 4 days later, alive. I want to say that clearly too, because I know how these stories usually go, and I don't want to bury the one piece of good news. She showed up at her apartment on her own, exhausted, disoriented, with no memory of the 2 days in between her last delivery and waking up in her car 40 miles away in a gas station parking lot outside Zanesville. She'd never heard of the underground room. She doesn't remember a voice or a person or anything after finishing that last delivery to Sycamore Court. Her phone had been wiped, not stolen, wiped, factory reset, sitting in her passenger seat like she'd done it herself. She doesn't talk about it much. I don't push her to. The lot at 114 Sycamore Court got bulldozed about 6 weeks after all this, officially for safety hazard remediation after the county finally got involved. There's nothing there now but dirt and a new fence, no depression, no hatch, nothing to prove any of it happened except the police report with my name on it, a report that officially concludes there was insufficient evidence of criminal activity at the site. I still drive for the app. Different hours now. I don't do anything past 11 p.m. anymore, and I don't take orders in that zip code at all. Not that it's ever come up again, because that address doesn't exist in the system anymore. It got scrubbed somehow, the same week the lot got cleared. No delivery history for it, no account that ever ordered from it. When I searched my own past orders looking for the address to show a friend, later all 5 Sycamore Court deliveries were just gone from my history, like they'd never happened. I still have the photos saved locally on my phone, thank God, because if I didn't, I might start wondering if I made the whole thing up. Here's the part one haven't told anybody except D. About 2 months after the lot got bulldozed, I got a delivery ping. Ordinary address, ordinary house, nothing strange about it on the surface. I pulled up, walked the bag to the door, took my photo like always, and when I glanced at my payment summary before driving off, the tip field read $13.13. I didn't see anyone. The house looked completely normal. Porch light on, a car in the driveway, a kid's bike on its side in the yard. I told myself it was a coincidence, that $13.13 isn't actually that rare a number, that plenty of people tip weird amounts. I believe that, most days. I just don't do that neighborhood anymore either.